I'm 69 and my daughter banned me from her wedding while demanding $130,000, so I made her regret every word. If you're settling in for a story about family betrayal, wedding drama, and the kind of revenge that's served ice cold, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because what I did to my entitled daughter will shock you. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. I love hearing from all of you. Now, let me tell you about the day my only child showed me exactly who she really was. My name is Teresa, I'm 69 years old, and I never thought I'd be the kind of mother telling this story. For most of my life, I believed that unconditional love meant accepting everything, forgiving everything, giving everything. I raised my daughter Julia as a single mother after my husband Richard passed away when she was only 7. I worked 2 jobs, one as a nurse during the day and another doing medical transcription at night, just to make sure she had everything she needed. Dance lessons, summer camps, a car for her 16th birthday, college tuition at a private university. I sacrificed my own retirement, my own dreams, my own life, really, all for her. And I did it gladly because that's what mothers do, right? We give and give and give, expecting nothing but love in return. Well, I learned the hard way that sometimes you raise a stranger who happens to have your eyes. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday in March. I remember because Tuesdays were my book club days, and I was running late when the mail came. There it was, this gorgeous cream-colored envelope with gold lettering, so elegant and expensive looking. My hands actually trembled as I opened it. Julia had been dating Marcus for 3 years, and while I'd never particularly warmed to him, he had this way of looking at people like they were somehow beneath him. I was happy she was happy. Or at least I thought I was supposed to be happy. But when I pulled out that invitation, my heart sank into my stomach. The wedding was scheduled for June 15th at some exclusive resort in Napa Valley. The kind of place that costs more for one night than most people spend on their entire weddings. And there at the bottom, in the same fancy script, it said, "Adults only celebration. Intimate ceremony for immediate wedding party only." I called Julia immediately, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. When she answered, her voice had that clipped, impatient tone she'd developed over the years, so different from the sweet little girl who used to crawl into my lap and tell me I was her best friend. "Mom, I'm at work," she said, not even a proper hello. I asked her about the invitation, about the wedding party only designation, trying to keep my voice steady. There was this long pause, and then she said it, those words that would change everything between us forever. "Mom, Marcus, and I decided we want an exclusive wedding. Just the people who really matter. You're not part of the wedding party, so you won't be attending the ceremony. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal." Those words echoed in my head as I stood in my small kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made her thousands of school lunches, where I'd stayed up countless nights helping with homework, where I'd cried alone so many times after Richard died because I didn't want her to see me weak. "Julia," I managed to say, "I'm your mother. How can you get married without your mother there?" She sighed, that exasperated sigh that made me feel like a burden, like an inconvenience. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You're making this about you and it's my special day. Marcus and I are creating the wedding of our dreams, and we need people there who align with our vision. Besides, there's something else I need to discuss with you." That's when she hit me with it. The bill. She actually emailed it to me while we were still on the phone. $130,000. Itemized. Venue, catering, flowers, photographer, videographer, the honeymoon suite in Bora Bora. Spending money for their month-long European honeymoon. Every single luxury imaginable, all laid out in a neat spreadsheet with my name at the top as primary contributor. I stared at my computer screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. "Julia, this is..." "I don't have this kind of money," I whispered. She laughed, actually laughed. "Mom, you have your house. You have Dad's life insurance money that you've been sitting on. You have savings. This is your only daughter's wedding. What else are you possibly saving it for? And, honestly, you should be thankful I'm even letting you contribute. Marcus's parents are paying for so much already, and they're actually going to be at the wedding. Letting me contribute." Those 3 words broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break. This wasn't my daughter asking for help. This was a stranger demanding tribute while simultaneously telling me I wasn't good enough to witness the moment I'd dreamed about since the day she was born. I hung up the phone without another word, and for the first time in 42 years of being a mother, I felt absolutely nothing for my child. No, that's not quite true. I felt something. I felt a cold, calculated clarity that I'd never experienced before. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that went cold while I thought about everything. The life insurance money Julia mentioned so casually? That was $60,000 that Richard had scrimped and saved for, money he'd intended to secure our daughter's future, but also to make sure I'd be taken care of in my old age. The house she expected me to leverage? I'd paid off the mortgage 3 years early by taking extra shifts and eating ramen noodles for dinner more times than I could count. My savings? That was my retirement, my security, my peace of mind for the years when I'd be too old to work. And she wanted it all for one day, one party, while excluding me from the actual ceremony. But here's what Julia didn't know, what she couldn't have known because she'd never bothered to really know me at all. Before I became a full-time nurse and medical transcriber, before Richard died and I had to become everything for our daughter, I worked in estate planning and financial services. I understood money, trusts, legal documents, and how to protect assets. And over the years, watching Julia become more and more entitled, more and more demanding, I'd made certain arrangements. Nothing malicious, just precautionary. I'd set up a living trust for the house. I'd moved most of my significant assets into accounts she didn't know about. The money she thought I was sitting on was actually carefully protected and allocated. I'd always told myself I was doing it to ensure I wouldn't be a burden to her in my old age. Now I realized I'd been protecting myself from her all along. The next morning, I called Julia back. I was calm, collected, almost cheerful. "Sweetheart," I said, using the endearment that now tasted like ash in my mouth, "I've thought about everything, and you're absolutely right. This is your special day, and I want to contribute." I could hear the smile in her voice when she responded, the greedy excitement. "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd come around. Marcus will be so pleased." I continued, "I'm going to write you a check for the full amount, $130,000. But I'll need a few weeks to liquidate some investments and get everything in order. Is that all right?" She was practically gushing with gratitude, or what passed for gratitude with her. "That's perfect, Mom. The wedding isn't until June anyway. Oh, and Marcus suggested that maybe you could host an engagement party for us too? Nothing huge, maybe 50 people or so. His colleague's mother did one, and it was so elegant." I agreed to everything. The engagement party, the money, all of it. And then I got to work. First, I hired a private investigator. Yes, you heard that right. I spent $2,000 of my carefully saved money to have Marcus investigated. Call it intuition, call it a mother's instinct, or maybe just call it the wisdom that comes from 69 years of watching people. Something about Marcus had always felt off to me, too smooth, too charming, too perfect. The investigator came back 3 weeks later with a file that made my blood run cold and simultaneously filled me with a sense of grim vindication. Marcus was running a cryptocurrency scam on the side, had been for 2 years. He defrauded at least a dozen investors out of nearly $500,000. He also had a girlfriend in Sacramento who had no idea he was engaged. The investigator even had photos, timestamps, hotel receipts, everything. But I didn't confront Julia with this information. Not yet. Instead, I planned the engagement party she'd requested. I rented a beautiful venue, hired excellent caterers, invited everyone she wanted, including Marcus's entire family and all their wealthy friends. I spent $15,000 of my own money, making it absolutely perfect. The night of the party, I wore my best dress, smiled at everyone, played the role of the proud, generous mother. I gave a toast that brought tears to people's eyes, talking about how I'd raised Julia alone after losing my beloved Richard, how I'd worked so hard to give her everything, how proud I was of the woman she'd become. Julia actually looked uncomfortable during parts of it, but she basked in the attention nonetheless. At the end of the party, as people were leaving, I pulled Julia and Marcus aside along with his parents, Gregory and Patricia, who had been quite cold to me all evening, clearly having been told I wasn't good enough for the actual wedding. "I have something for you both," I said, pulling out an envelope. Julia's eyes lit up, probably thinking it was the check. Instead, I handed her a letter. "This is my formal decline of your request for financial contribution to your wedding," I said clearly, making sure Gregory and Patricia could hear. "And my notification that you are no longer welcome in my home or my life." Julia's face went white, then red. "What? Mom, what are you talking about? You promised." I smiled, that same calm smile I'd been wearing all evening. "I promised I'd think about contributing to your special day. I thought about it. And I've decided that a daughter who bans her mother from her wedding while demanding more than $100,000 doesn't deserve a cent. Or a mother, for that matter." Marcus stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "You bitter old woman. You're just jealous that Julia has found someone who can actually provide for her, unlike your pathetic dead husband." That's when I played my final card. I pulled out my phone and projected the investigators' photos onto the venue's screen system that had been showing pictures of Julia and Marcus throughout the evening. There they were, images of Marcus with his other girlfriend, screenshots of his fraudulent cryptocurrency scheme, bank statements showing the money he'd stolen. The remaining guests gasped. Patricia actually screamed. Gregory's face turned purple with rage, but not at me, at Marcus. Julia stood frozen, staring at the screen as her perfect life crumbled in real time. "I've already sent all of this evidence to the FBI," I announced. "They're very interested in financial fraud. I've also contacted every single person Marcus scammed. Some of them are here tonight, actually. They're filing a civil suit in addition to the criminal charges." Marcus bolted. He actually ran out of the venue like a coward, leaving Julia standing there in her designer dress, surrounded by whispers and stares. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment she looked like my little girl again. "Mom, how could you?" she whispered. I walked up to her, close enough that only she could hear my response. "How could I? Julia, I gave you everything. I sacrificed my entire life for you. And you repaid me by treating me like a bank account that wasn't even worthy of attending your wedding. You wanted to turn your dream into reality by draining everything I had. So I turned your dream into a nightmare instead. The difference is you deserved it." I left the venue and drove home, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in months. The next few weeks were chaos, of course. Marcus was arrested. His parents blamed Julia for not vetting him properly, as if his crimes were somehow her fault. The wedding was canceled. Julia called me dozens of times, leaving voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to apologetic. She showed up at my house more times than I could count. I never answered the door. She sent emails, texts, even had some of her friends reach out to me. Everyone had an opinion about what I'd done. Some people thought I was cruel. Others thought Marcus's exposure was justified, but that I should forgive Julia. Here's what I want all of you listening to understand, whether you're in New York or Texas or California or watching from another country entirely, and seriously, drop a comment and tell me where you are. I love knowing my story is reaching people everywhere. What I want you to understand is this: there's a difference between unconditional love and unconditional tolerance of abuse. I loved my daughter unconditionally. I still do, in some broken way. But I will not be disrespected, discarded, and financially exploited by anyone, not even my own child. Especially not my own child, because she should have known better. I raised her to be better. 6 months have passed now. Julia's life fell apart in spectacular fashion. Marcus is facing federal charges and will likely spend years in prison. His other girlfriend sued him in civil court. Julia lost most of her friends when the truth came out because it turned out she'd known about some of Marcus's shady business dealings and had chosen to ignore them because she liked the lifestyle. She lost her job too, because the scandal reflected poorly on the prestigious firm where she worked. She had to move back to her tiny apartment, sell her designer clothes and handbags to pay rent. And through it all, I maintained my silence. Until last week. Last week, I received a handwritten letter from Julia, not an email or a text, but an actual letter in the mail. In it, she didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for help. She didn't make excuses. She simply apologized. Really apologized. She wrote about how she'd been thinking about everything, how she'd been in therapy, how she'd realized that she'd become someone she didn't recognize, someone cruel and entitled and selfish. She wrote about memories from her childhood, things I didn't even know she remembered. The time I worked a double shift on her birthday, but still managed to bake her favorite cake at midnight. The way I held her when she had nightmares after Richard died. The countless sacrifices she'd witnessed, but never truly appreciated. She wrote, "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserved a daughter who treasured you, and instead you got me." I read that letter 50 times. I cried over it, I raged over it, I felt my heart break and heal and break again. And yesterday, I did something I swore I'd never do. I called her. When she answered, her voice was small and uncertain, so different from the confident, demanding tone she'd used before. "Hello? Julia," I said, "it's Mom." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then I heard her crying, these quiet, broken sobs that reminded me of when she was 7 and her father had just died. "Julia, I got your letter," I continued. "And I want you to know something. What you did to me was unforgivable. The pain you caused, the disrespect you showed, the way you valued money over our relationship, all of that was unforgivable. But here's what I've learned in my 69 years on this planet. Love isn't about keeping score. It's not about revenge, even when revenge feels justified. It's about deciding who you want to be when everything falls apart." We talked for 3 hours. I didn't forgive her, not entirely, not yet. Maybe I never will completely. But I listened to her. I let her tell me everything she'd been through, everything she'd learned. And at the end of the conversation, I told her something that felt both terrifying and liberating to say. I'm willing to try again. Not to go back to how things were. That's impossible. But to build something new, something honest, something real. If you're willing to put in the work, so am I. She agreed immediately, gratefully. We've started having weekly phone calls. She's still in therapy. I'm in therapy now too, working through my own issues with boundaries and people-pleasing and the complicated dynamics of mother-daughter relationships. Here's the thing about revenge that nobody tells you. It feels amazing in the moment. Watching Julia's face when her perfect life crumbled, seeing Marcus get what he deserved, knowing I'd protected my assets and my dignity, all of that felt powerful and righteous. But revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't fill the emptiness left by betrayal. It doesn't restore what was broken. What heals you is making the conscious choice to either rebuild or walk away, and having the wisdom to know which option serves your soul better. For me, I'm choosing to try to rebuild, cautiously, with firm boundaries and open eyes. But I'm also proud that I stood up for myself. I'm proud that I didn't let myself be exploited. I'm proud that I showed my daughter that actions have consequences, even when those actions come from family. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. Whether you think I was right or wrong, whether you would have done the same thing or something completely different, I appreciate you being here with me through this journey. Make sure you hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe because I have a feeling my life is far from boring and there might be more stories to share. And please drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what you would have done in my situation. Would you have forgiven your child immediately? Would you have cut them off forever? Do you think I did the right thing, or did I go too far? I genuinely want to know, because one thing I've learned through all of this is that there are no easy answers when it comes to family. So this is Teresa, 69 years old, still figuring out how to navigate the complicated waters of parenthood, still learning that strength sometimes means saying no, and still believing, despite everything, that love can transform if we're brave enough to demand better from the people we love and from ourselves. Until next time, take care of yourselves, set those boundaries, and remember that you are worthy of respect from everyone in your life, especially your family.